I learned a ton about the business of cancer. I learned a ton about how much control over it we actually have. I learned about the connection between autoimmunity and cancer and how the immune system works. And when I sat down with the oncologist before the surgery, I asked him, is there anything that I can do for myself? And he looked me dead in the eye and he said, no. And I decided people need to know about this.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Houghton. And today we're joined by Heather Cooan, a double board certified functional oncology nutrition consultant, lived experience mentor, and transformational coach. With her unique expertise and personal journey overcoming Hashimoto's, lichen sclerosus, and vulvar cancer, Heather possesses a wealth of knowledge that resonates deeply with those facing chronic illness. Her approach is centered around bioindividuality, empowering her clients through personalized lab and genetic testing. Heather's one-on-one evidence-based support in nutritional care, lifestyle interventions, and environmental design equips individuals with the tools they need to thrive, especially in the face of cancer and autoimmune diseases. In today's conversation, we're discussing that connection between autoimmunity and cancer, and how important it is to identify and address the drivers of either illness in order to truly heal. Heather, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited for our conversation because you just have such a unique, I don't even want to say niche, purpose, really. And so I can't wait and you also have an amazing healing journey, and very inspiring, which is what we're all about. So I would love for you to share with listeners a bit of, what got you into this space. I believe you were in marketing back when.
Yeah.
And so share a bit of your journey with us, and then we can dig into all the good stuff you're doing now.
Sounds good. Yeah. So I've had several lives as far as careers. But I was in marketing, executive, not C-suite, but almost. Actually, I think I did end up in the C-suite at the end. But in the process of giving too much of myself away and living for my career and climbing that corporate ladder and, chasing the dollar, if you will, and the prestige or whatever comes with getting the title, my body totally gave out. And I was hit myself with a cancer diagnosis. And all the check engine lights were turning on and staying on for like 10, 15 years prior. So I always get my chronology messed up. I'm pretty sure 2005, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. Because I was on a friend trip and I got the flu and they did blood work and it turned out my thyroid was low. And so I started driving down that path. And then when I was diagnosed with cancer in 2017, I also at the exact same moment was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition called lichen sclerosus. And it's
rough one.
Awful. Those who have experienced it know what I'm talking about, but it's when your immune system attacks the skin of your genitalia.
Yeah.
And so, putting it in not so gross terms, permanent jock itch is what you deal with, and architectural changes and sexual dysfunction and all kinds of emotional stuff that comes with that because it's an embarrassing and private part of the body. And nobody knows what it is. So we're definitely doing better with awareness now, and doctors are getting more educated. But I had symptoms of lichen sclerosus since I was like 8 or 12, like as long as I can remember.
Nice.
My mom actually would embarrass me because she thought it was funny telling her girlfriends at like hanging around the lunch table or whatever, that in the grocery store line, I would announce, Mom, my vagina itches.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and she thought it was, cute but it was embarrassing to her and me. And she just kind of like looking around. But so
it is, that's a whole nother, we could do a whole podcast on it. It's a body part, and you were a kid who was trying to communicate some discomfort.
Yes,
but I get
absolutely.
it, polite society and all. Yeah.
Yep. And now I know it wasn't my vagina, it was my vulva, right? The extra genitalia, which nobody knows about. So we're trying to make that aware.
Yeah.
But nobody could figure out what it was. I was like in and out of doctors and all of what's going on. Nobody could figure it out. It was blamed on poor hygiene, blamed on being overweight. I've always been a little bit chubby. It was blamed on this detergent, and maybe it's an allergy, and maybe it's your underwear, maybe it's yeast, maybe it's BV, maybe it's. But nobody ever thought anything of it. And throughout my full like gynecological adventure, I would go in and have like regular annual PAPs, and they would just go in and do the swab and not pay attention to the fact that my vulva was white like paper and rough skin.
Right.
And so I finally just gave up going to the doctor and trying to figure it out. Went on with my life. And as autoimmunes do, it would wax and wane in severity, and it would flavor and calm down. And so it was always just, it was what it was. And I just accepted it as part of my lot in life and moved forward. In my career, I totally lost my identity in the corporate world. And at the height of my disease progression, I was eating fast food or DoorDash or delivery like every
Sure.
like whatever I could stuff in my face. I was self-medicating with tobacco. I was actually a big cigar smoker, which is unusual for ladies. And I was drinking wine by the bottle. So it's like a glimpse of what was happening. I was not sleeping. I was not slowing down. I was certainly not exercising. I wasn't doing any of the things that we know we should be doing. And so it got to the worst it's ever been. And then I developed a tear that would not heal for months. And out of that tear grew what we now know was a tumor. And so I went in finally, but not before I scoured the internet because of my poor experience with the medical.
Sure. Yeah.
And I self-diagnosed. I came across lichen sclerosus and vulvar cancer. And I was like, oh yeah, this is probably what I've got. So I sought out a specialist, a vulvar specialist, same as Dr. Joseph Brooks here in Phoenix. And he's wonderful for anybody who's dealing with these things. And I went in and basically sought out confirmation of my self-diagnosis. And so he did a biopsy and said, oh yeah, it's probably, you're probably correct. Sent it in, came back positive for vulvar carcinoma. And so that was when I was like, oh, well, okay then. We gotta change some stuff.
This isn't working.
Right. This is not working. I'm not taking care of myself. And I will never, ever forget when I was talking with my oncologist about what to do. I was like, he's like, okay, so we're going to go through surgery. We'll remove the cancerous tissue and you'll be fine. These things are fine. It turns out that the size and location of the lesion was very close to my clitoris. And they wanted to remove the entire clitoris in order to get all of the cancerous tissue removed. And I pushed back because I was only 37 at the time.
Yeah.
I had no idea what kind of a like feminine identity, sexual identity, like typical function of my body changing. Like that's an organ you're losing. It's not a vital organ, obviously, but it's an organ.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go down that emotional path. Yeah. And so I negotiated. I said, how about you just remove as much of the cancerous tissue as you can, but leave me intact. Yeah. And he said, okay. He's like, you may need additional treatment, which would be radiation chemotherapy if we did that, just so you know. And he tried gently but persistently to persuade me. And I said, no, please, just leave me intact. And so he went ahead and he did that. And the sample came back. When they remove cancerous tissue from the body, they want to get what's called clear margins. And I kind of liken it to cutting the mold off of the cheese.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
For those of us that grew up where mom was like, it's fine, just cut that part off. You don't just cut through the mold, you cut through the good cheese outside of the mold.
Right.
Get that clear margin.
Yeah.
And my sample came back where there was still cancerous tissue on 3 out of 4 sides of the tissue that was removed. So they did not get it all. And so the next step was going to be either in the second surgery to remove whatever they needed to, or pretty intense radiation with low dose chemotherapy to address the rest. And when I sat down with the oncologist before the surgery, I asked him, is there anything that I can do for myself? And he looked me dead in the eye and he said, no, you didn't do this to yourself. You're just unlucky. We'll cut it out and you'll be fine. Don't worry. We've got you covered. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to remove the clitoris. I don't want to go through radiation. When I sat down with the radiation oncologist and learned about the short and long-term side effects of radiation to that part of my body, that was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Like I could have lost my bladder, my colon. I could have burned my intestines together. Definitely would have lost elasticity and maybe sensation, and I wouldn't be able to self-lubricate. Early menopause, medically induced, was probably going to happen. Lots and lots of things, not to mention 3rd-degree sunburns and like fiery diarrhea, and it's nasty.
Right. Just the regular terrible side.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. And so I didn't like any of those answers. And I had been seeing a naturopathic doctor for my Hashimoto's for a while. And I sat down with her in my investigations and was like, this is what's happened. And she said, I've actually worked with clients in an alternative capacity to deal with cancer. And the type of cancer I had is called squamous cell, which is a type of cell, like a type of tissue. She said, it's actually kind of a weak cancer and we can knock it out with alternative means. And I had never even thought about that.
Right.
And so I went down that road and I ended up doing the metabolic approach to cancer, which is now what I specialize in. I'm trained by Dr. Naisha Winters and I work very closely with her trained physicians on a lot of our cases. So I did a therapeutic ketogenic diet and I overhauled my entire life. I quit my high-powered job. I made my job healing and taking care of myself.
Yes.
I looked at every element of my life, the mental and emotional aspects, the nutritional aspects, making sure I was sleeping. I actually was like, well, I've got cancer. Now I can get cannabis, so I might as well. So I went. The first time I took cannabis, I slept, like actually slept for the first time in like 5 years. And the clarity and the calmness when I woke up after that first dose was like, oh, I did not realize how far I had gotten away from me.
Yeah.
And so that kind of birthed everything. I learned a lot through that process. I didn't just do those things. I also treated the rest of the cancer, but through alternative means. I dosed IBCs and HBOTs and lots of supplements and all of that.
Yeah.
And I learned a ton about the business of cancer. I learned a ton about how much control over it we actually have. Mm-hmm. I learned about the connection between autoimmunity and cancer and how the immune system works. And I decided people need to know about this. People need to understand and be empowered with tools that they can use to help them through their journey. And this is whether they choose alternative therapies or standard of care therapies.
Or combo.
Yes. Yes. In my experience, the best approach is any tool that's appropriate for your case based on your data.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up here. I decided to make it my career.
Amazing. And I love, parts of all of us have parts of our journey that's very personal. And I love your candid approach because that is how you reach people and help people. Not enough people talk about lichens. Definitely nobody's talking about vulvar cancer.
It's rare.
But people need to know. And I love that you were just having a conversation with a client a couple days ago. Most women, I'm in my 50s, most women my age, you're right, they call their whole genitalia vagina, like you did when you were 8.
Yeah.
And they don't, we were having a conversation with a gal who, she even realized, she's like, I think I need to look at some pictures and you know,
Figure out my anatomy. Yeah.
yeah, she's like, I have nobody. If they taught me in this anatomy in health class decades ago, and I'm like, well, no, I mean, I don't think they really did. Um,
Right.
so it is. So I love that you're allowing you know normalizing the fact that thing you know that this is it's an area of the body we need to keep healthy. And I just love that you, wherever it came from in that moment, knew that you know the risk of the treatment they were recommending, was not in your best interest at that time.
Yeah. And I get a lot of questions about that. The biggest question I get is how the heck did you decide to, because I refused
That's a
chemotherapy and
Yep,
radiation.
but that's a
And people always ask how it was the most terrifying decision I've ever made.
sure.
It's really scary to choose something that doesn't have like all of the studies and the data and all of the, intense research behind it that
Yep.
we would accept in the medical world. And it's
Yep.
also really scary to accept what's standard in medical procedure that comes with so much damage and the risk of secondary cancers down the line and all of this like turmoil. But at the end of the day, that is a personal decision and each of us has to decide what's right for them. For me, I knew that if I didn't invest in myself in making change and just let it be in someone else's hand, I would not actually change. And vulvar cancer has an up to 40% recurrence rate. So
Wow.
if I was only going to
So
do
even
this,
if you had done all of that,
right, I had to change my life. I had to change way I was treating myself, mind, body, and soul in order to actually get longevity.
well, and when people ask me like, oh, what do we do at the clinic, or how is it different, or what is functional medicine, and a root cause is so overused now. I'm like, we ask why,
Right.
right? Why did you have autoimmunity since you were a kid, even though you didn't know it?
Mhm.
I mean, with you, my actual first autoimmune condition was diagnosed after my RA, and I was like, oh, I have celiac, and
Yeah.
in hindsight that explains the IBS, like all the things.
And that's not uncommon. I see that with my clients. And that was my story. I had Hashimoto's discovery in 2005,
Yeah.
LS 2017. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, even though the symptoms for
since
the
I was a
LS
kid.
were from
Yeah.
childhood.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I applaud you, and I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. I want to talk about, I brought up the why, because like whatever treatment approach, and for those listening on audio, I'm using air quotes here, but
Mm.
whatever treatment approach one chooses or combo of, you still have to get to the why, so you don't have a recurrence or it doesn't show up in another way, right? I.e., I have autoimmunity and just, doing the things that my rheumatologist told me to do 2 decades ago. Um, we could be sitting here because I could say, well, now I have cancer,
Sure.
right? So let's talk a little bit about the individual drivers. Not there. I know there are too many possibilities. I can't talk about all of the, but how does one even begin to unravel?
Mm.
How did I get here? Because that's what you did. You just, whether it was intuition, I'm guessing intuition
Yes.
finally like jumped up and protected you of like, oh, don't go that route. And,
Yeah.
um, so, and you needed a whole revamp of life and lifestyle, which sounds daunting.
It is.
Uh, it can be.
Yeah.
But you had really obviously significant motivation, so
Yeah.
I know I just threw like 20 things I want to talk about,
No, this
but
is good. This is really good. Um, and I guess let's start with the motivation or like
yeah,
the chutzpah, if you will.
at a
Like,
girl.
we gotta find a little bit of energy to get started. And I work primarily with cancer, but I also work with autoimmunity and complex chronic illness. And I find that my cancer clients have like literally life-threatening motivation to make
Right.
change. That's different from someone who comes in with autoimmunity who just feels like crap and doesn't have enough energy to like make sure that their stocks match, let alone
Yeah.
and make life
I
change
was there. Yeah.
across the board. Yeah, so was I. And it wasn't until cancer kicked me in the face that I was like,
Right.
oh, I gotta make these
Yeah.
changes.
Well, and sometimes it can be, it's not even, I mean, yours was like a glaring thing. For me, it was listening to my youngest
Mhm.
tell me that she was afraid I was going to die,
Ah,
and knowing I had already had the fear I wasn't going to live to see 50.
sure.
But then when you hear that your kids can't fall asleep at night because they're afraid you're going to be gone,
Yeah.
which seemed like the only option for where I was headed, right? And so that was that, there's whether it's a dig deep and figure out what your driver is, or if there is a moment. There was no new information other than for me in that moment, I had this realization that especially for people in what, no matter the diagnosis, you mentioned complex chronic illness, right? So
Mhm.
any of those things, um, for the longest time, I thought I was doing everything
Yes.
because I tried all of the medications my doctors told me to take.
Mhm.
And so I would, if anybody had told me sooner that there were other things I could have done, I would have.
Yeah.
But nobody told me that, you know.
And
But
that's such a common experience, right? So many
yeah,
people get to the point where they just can't before they realize that there's other things.
right. This is why we're having these conversations, right? So that hopefully over time that changes.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and
And
so,
it
yeah, so I agree with you. I think cancer tends to be, in and of itself, can be a motivator. I mean, we're all wired differently anyway, but
yes.
growing up as a mini Jewish mama, even as a kid, like our tendency, even as a kid, or not as a kid, but even as a young adult, if something really weird was wrong,
Mhm.
my first thought would be like, oh my God, it's cancer. You know?
That happens a lot, yeah.
Yeah, because that would, and then I luckily do have the ability to quickly back myself down,
Down.
like,
Totally.
oh, but especially for the people with the big question mark, right? So they're fatigued, so how do you, because I love that you said that we have to have some energy to dig
Yeah.
in to make change.
Yes. Yes. And it's different for everyone in terms of what thread we pull. Because we're like you said, we're dealing with people who have experienced a very slow but consistent erosion in how they are feeling.
Yeah.
And that is like parallel to a slow erosion of how they're able to show up, not just for themselves, but in life in general.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely a matter of really understanding the person when I'm working with a client, really understanding the person and their story. Because what I find is what Naisha says this all the time. She says your biography influences your biology.
It does indeed. Yep.
And so I actually have my clients or someone close to them write out their chronology. And this can take a little bit of energy in and of itself. But if you
Sure.
write down your life story in one sentence or one page or whatever,
Hmm.
sometimes they're just dictating and the technology is doing it for us. They're just
Sure.
telling me their story.
Yeah.
Then you start to see, oh, all of these things led to maybe I picked up some stress coping mechanisms that were
Uh-huh.
not healthiest.
Yeah.
Because everything always equates down to daily habits, and daily habits usually equate down to I have made like conclusions in
Story.
my mind about things, or
Yeah.
I've picked up certain coping tools that served me at one point but no longer serve me now, or are actually
Which
creating harm.
which means we don't have to judge ourselves for that because all of those things did come up to serve us, and we can acknowledge and thank them and let go and learn new tricks.
They were protective. They were how we survived. They were how we got through whatever it was that was difficult.
Yeah.
And so that's usually where I start. Like, tell me your story. And I've done enough work on myself, and I'm still going through the trauma chapter myself. It turns out that's the core of my onion that disrupted my terrain in the first place. So I'm terrain-based, as are you. So this is kind of how functional medicine works. But I think about the body or the terrain as your soil. I'm a big gardener. And so I think about the soil. And then we think about like what's below the soil, all the microbes and the like matter that gets chewed up, the detritus that the bacteria feed on. And then we have the roots of the plants. And a lot of people talk about root causes. And so something is disturbed in that soil that is impacting those roots. And I would actually argue that our emotional experiences and how we cope with things are the water that feeds those roots. And so if the water becomes acidic or becomes like, like radiated rain or whatever, then it doesn't matter what you do to the soil. You have to change the water source in order for those plants to thrive. And that is what I think of when I think of the emotional things that happen to us that cause us to pick up things like stress eating, emotional eating, reaching for potato chips or cake or cigarettes or alcohol or scrolling or staying up late to watch movies or not addressing things that are bothering us or giving too much of ourselves away or chronically people pleasing or not setting boundaries or taking on too much or all of that. And a lot of this is
so all of,
you know
what I mean? It's like this hierarchy. That's why I love that you said we use a lot of the same language, and finding which thread you pull, because it's never one thing.
Correct.
And B, where we need to start. Sometimes it's not like even the big thing.
Right.
And so I love that. And thank you for that visual. That I just love I'm a gardener too, though. So but anybody, I mean, that has any appreciation of nature.
Yeah. You can understand it.
Yeah.
And that's my big thing, is trying to take complicated stuff and translate it into plain English for folks so it makes it tangible. They can grasp onto it. Yeah. And then it becomes something that they can buy into and start to implement. Yeah. So it's always different in terms of what thread, but I'm always looking for what's the smallest thread that we can pull that can give you either a little bit of awareness of how you're traveling through life or a little bit of energy. Yeah. And energy can come in a little bit of self-confidence because, oh, you're right, I made that little change. Yeah. Or it can come in trying to reconnect cellular energy, which is usually mitochondria.
Yeah.
And so for my non-cancer clients, we dig into a lot of minerals because minerals are the spark plugs of energy, like what move hydration and nutrients in and out of the cell membrane. They are what are the cofactors for our entire endocrine system. And I don't know about you, but I have yet to come across an autoimmune situation where there is not an endocrine component of some kind.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yes. And for those who don't know endocrine, it's hormones.
Right.
It's really what we're talking about.
And it can be chicken, egg. It doesn't matter. Like,
yes. That's right. Yeah. So blood sugar is a big piece of the hormonal picture. When insulin is too high for too long, it cascades down and disrupts all of your hormones. Then there's also the sex hormones themselves. So women are going to be in a very different place if they are menstruating or the week before menstruation or perimenopause or menopause or pre-menstruation, the little guys. I do work with children sometimes in my practice. And then there's also the thyroid. That's a big piece to the endocrine system. The adrenal glands, a big piece of the end. Like this is all of like the whole endocrine system.
Well, and like you said, there is nobody that has autoimmunity unless they've already addressed and done the healing work. You know, where when people will be like, oh, well, I have HPA, you know, back when I don't think they even say that anymore, but HPA access disorder, or
Right.
it's like,
Back
yeah,
for that, it was adrenal fatigue. Yep.
right. And how, yes, and it's just semantics, but like it goes hand in hand, and it's just a matter of tipping point, you know.
Right.
And so, and I want to highlight, you said, I'm using different words, but for all of us, these things that don't just pop up overnight, even if you think, if your awareness, you know, tells you like, oh, you know, I was fine yesterday and today I have these symptoms.
Yeah.
This stuff brews for a
Yes.
long time.
Yes.
And it's one of the reasons I say it all. It's like probably too much on the podcast. Is one of my biggest pet peeves, because I feel like for many of these things, fatigue becomes eventually a big factor.
Mhm.
And it's so frustrating to me that, and especially women are still told, well, of course you're tired, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to go to the doctor because they're tired when they know they're not getting enough sleep, or
Yes.
you know, like we know the difference, and especially as women, what it takes for us to even speak up
Yeah.
and acknowledge like something is off. So I just wanted to highlight like that you know, you had I mean, your whole life. So talk about, I always say like the kind of disconnecting from our body
Uh-huh.
can, again, it can lead to, or it can come from, I lived in chronic pain, and so, you
Yes.
know, it's a coping mechanism,
Yes.
and it's something that needs addressing for healing. um I can only imagine, as somebody who had physical symptoms from childhood, that nobody,
Yes.
like that had to be part of your, like, well, I have to just ignore it and carry on.
Yep. It just is what it is. It's a
Yeah.
lot in life. I love that you're bringing this up because I will say that more often than not, I do find a disconnection in my clients, and I'm still trying to reconnect myself between mind and body.
It's a process. I think if we're not constantly working on it, that like I think we all have to, just like
Yeah.
you said, you're still working on your trauma. Well, I don't, this is just my belief. Like you can't be ready to like, we are like onions. And so as you heal, then you become ready to go down to that next layer. And other stuff is going to come up, other
Yes.
opportunities, other mirrors are going to be held up in front of us. And it's the same as, I'm still, if you did a toxin panel on me today,
Sure.
you would be like, oh my gosh, how do you function? And I
Right.
feel great. You
Yep.
know, to me, the trauma and the toxins,
Yeah.
it's an ongoing, lifelong process, and it is the same. You know, I think, at least for me, with working with the mind body connection, and
Yes.
really realizing that there's more growth to happen.
100%. And that's why I use so many analogies, but the onion analogy is very helpful for people to understand that it all doesn't have to happen right now.
Yes.
And it's so, so important for people to understand that this stuff does brew for years and years or decades, in
Yeah.
my case, 2 decades
Yeah.
almost, before I figured out what it was. Um, or I guess a little over 2 decades. I said 25 years. Goodness.
I know, time flies.
But when you start to understand that, like, when you have, like, if you have, like, a little, like, irritation on your hand, like, maybe you get a splinter,
Mhm.
and maybe you don't notice that splinter, but over time, it starts to get inflamed and red and probably infected, and it starts to create pus, and now if it goes long enough, you could lose that finger.
Mhm.
And so when you think about things in a progression like that, something is interrupting your soil or contaminating your water, and then it's just left to
Mhm.
kind of fester. And then
Sure.
it starts to branch out and affect other systems in the body because we're all connected. We're one big spider web of connection.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so hard with the conventional medical system. They all intend good, but everything is
Yes.
siloed,
Yep.
and they don't understand how to identify things before they become a problem that need a prescription, a surgery, an intervention.
Subclinical, my favorite word. Yeah.
Exactly. They're just not built that way.
Right.
And so that's why a lot of people end up going down that entire road and exhausting everything before they're fed up and they start taking matters into their own hands. And
Yeah.
that's how they end up with folks like you and me trying to understand what led to this in the first place. And now we're trying to unwind 30 years, 40 years. I have clients that are in their 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
90 years
Yeah.
of writing life with like wheels that are duct taped and like, everything's fallen apart. And then when we start to unwind, like, oh, they get it. But it also is why a lot of people can't do things on their own, like an autoimmune protocol, and just start chucking out foods
Yeah.
and don't feel any better. Well, it's
Yeah.
probably not just the food.
Well,
There's
thank you.
other
I was like, wait.
There's lots of other things.
Yeah, that's why if it was as simple as I am an AIP certified coach, like it's a great protocol. It's also not just, it's not a diet, it's a protocol that it does include all of these things. People don't
like
realize.
reintroductions.
Well, yes, but also the stress management, the movement, it all like full lifestyle, but everybody focuses on the diet and if it were that simple, we could all read a book and heal, right?
Yeah.
And I think you said something early on that I really do think leads to us waiting until we feel like we've exhausted all of the conventional routes. And also, I don't even like that word. I'm going to say allopathic, because to me, what you do and what I do
We're the
not
OGs.
unconventional.
We're the OGs. This is original medicine.
Yeah, this is actual medicine. And I just lost my train of thought.
I'm so sorry.
No. It's this idea of like the doctor will fix it, right? Like the both of us focus on empowering our clients. It's all about empowering.
Agency.
Yes. But it's not like, I just feel like the Western medical system and just society in general. I mean, it used to be like, oh, doctors knew it all. And if the doctor said so, it must be true. And again, I'm married to a doctor. I love them. I love that you said, because I say it all the time, like they all get into medicine to help.
Yeah.
And Western medicine is amazing at acute care. If I
Yes,
need
it absolutely
surgery,
has its place.
I'm not going for acupuncture or, like,
Yes.
but when it comes to but it's sick care.
Right.
And we're talking about how do we get well.
Right.
And I really think, so with agency comes responsibility.
Yes.
And that's a huge mindset shift.
Yes.
Right.
When I say things like I gave myself cancer, people are like taken aback. Like, and I say that on a little bit of a jest and a little bit of trying to make a strong point.
Right.
But I didn't know what I didn't know. And
Right.
once I knew, now I can do better because I know.
Right.
And so there is also, I don't know if you experienced this when you realized about how all of the way you were living was contributing to your illness. There's a little bit of self-blame and guilt and like shame that comes with that.
It's all part of, it's like the stages of grief. And I went through anger. I mentioned before we started recording, diet, meditation, thread. There's so many, literally like you, my entire lifestyle changed. But I definitely went through anger. Once I learned and knew and started to feel better and heal, I got angry. Yes. I didn't hold on to it. It was one of the phases, right? After my family was in the dairy business when I was growing up, and we ate margarine because
Oh,
we were afraid of fat,
yeah.
you know. Um, and so I was so fat deprived. But and you mentioned minerals, and so I want to mention for we tend to focus on what do I need to avoid, what do I need to give up, what do I and often we first need to build the good or support what we may be lacking
Correct.
to allow the body to do what it needs to do, like make energy.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
People
And
don't realize, like when I say minerals or when I say fatty acids, right? Because
uh-huh.
omega-3s are a big thing. People think supplements.
Yeah.
And I am so stingy with supplements. So
Oh,
stingy. I have to be on the cancer side because we can drive cancer accidentally, and we
right.
can also interrupt therapies and treatments
Right.
accidentally with supplementation. So we have to be very cautious there. And so that I've just embraced that in my entire practice and in my personal life. As few supplements as possible to get us going because there's so much we can do with diet and so much we can do if we take stress off the system so you can actually digest and assimilate the nutrients you're taking in from your food. And people don't realize that stress means all stress, not just mental and emotional,
Yeah.
not just taxes, not just traffic. It's like the pressure you put on yourself.
Mhm.
It's the microbiome that is mismatched and kind of, effed up. It
Yep.
is the night of sleep that you didn't get because you were worried about whatever you were worried about, or that your nervous system was stuck in fight or flight because you're a coffee junkie and you're not supporting rest in some
Right.
cases. Like whatever that habit is or whatever that thing is that's interrupting you. Chronic pain, huge element there.
Yeah.
All of those things. They all put the nervous system in a state of activation. When the nervous system is activated, it pulls resources from every other system, digestion being a really big one. And
Yeah.
so we got to calm all that down first so you can digest. And then maybe if you need supplements, sure.
Yeah.
But I don't jump to supplements first.
Which is amazing. I hear people say all the time, our food is mineral depleted.
Mhm.
So how are you helping people
Good
assimilate
question.
minerals from diet?
Yeah. So it's all in the food sourcing. So if you have the means and access and budget, now it's about learning how your food is handled, how it's grown, where it comes from, and how it's farmed. So I'm a big proponent of regenerative agriculture, and that
Yes.
is replenishing the soil in the process. And
Yeah.
so if you're able to find a local farmer that takes good care of his soil or her soil, and they're putting things back in, then you can count on those greens actually being high in magnesium and all
Yeah.
of the minerals that we're looking for. So it's in the sourcing. And if
Yeah.
you are stuck in a place where you're not able to source good food or you still feel like you're not getting what you need, we can absolutely add and supplement there.
Sure.
But we also find minerals in places where people don't realize, right? Like seafood is very high in minerals. We have to be careful about the type of seafood in the oceans that it's
You read my
comes
mind. I was
from.
like, toxins.
Yeah.
And I eat
But this is
good.
this is a process of learning where our
Yeah.
food comes from and how it's handled and how it's impacted. And so
Yes.
that's typically where I start. And this stuff is sprinkled throughout many conversations with folks. It's not about go find all of these new places to get your food. It's about
Sure.
start with one staple.
Yeah. No, I love that it just like any other change, right? One thing at a time.
Yeah.
I too, I mean, I'm blessed to live in a place where I can know where, I mean, one of our longtime clinic patients raises grass-fed, grass-finished cattle.
Yeah.
And that's who fills our freezer, when we've been to the ranch. So
Yep.
I do understand not everybody has that available.
Yeah.
And but just learning about the quality of the food, I was going to say, especially your proteins, but I don't know, all of it.
It's really everything.
It
Yeah.
is.
But
It
you're
is.
mentioning grass-fed, grass-finished beef. Bone broth is a really wonderful
Yes.
mineral-rich food.
Yeah.
if you can handle it, not everybody can. Bone marrow is actually pretty mineral rich. Like,
Yes.
people don't realize that minerals live, it's not just in the soil, in the plants. There's
Right.
lots of different places where we can get minerals, like egg yolks, very high in iodine, which is a mineral. Like, there's lots
Yeah.
of places where we can get this stuff. And yes, I love that you are basically utilizing your local community.
But
Because
I do understand that,
not everybody.
we're very blessed to be able to do that, and we have enough land to have, a chicken coop on a trailer bed and pastured chickens following behind our horses and try to contribute a little bit to
Sure.
that regenerative, I'm not saying farming, as we're not farming those pastures, but even still, I mean, just enriching the soil and giving our chickens a happy life. And somebody had one of our eggs for the first time recently, and they were like, "Holy cow!"
I raise
The
chickens. I get
yolk
the
was
same.
bright orange, and I'm like, "That's what color a yolk is supposed to be."
Yeah, and they taste different. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the
Um,
other piece to this is that people always think about, well, my food doesn't have what I need. But what about the other things that are putting stress on your body that are causing you to use more of what you're depleted in or causing depletions in the first place?
yes.
So, for a good example, just on the egg note with iodine,
Yeah.
are you brushing your teeth with fluoride toothpaste? Is your water filtered? Because we've got
Yeah.
tons of fluoride in our water.
Yep.
So, those halogens connect to the thyroid and block iodine binding. So, it
Right.
doesn't matter how many egg yolks you eat or where they come from if you still have those fluorides in the way.
Right.
So, it's those kinds of things. Same with bromides in breads, like commercial breads and things. So, it's unraveling not just good source nutrient dense food.
Right.
Also, let's take stress off the body so that you don't need as much in the first place. And another big example is blood sugar regulation. So
Mm.
if you're including a lot of sugar in your diet, or you are constantly stressed that your body's making a lot of sugar, it takes, this is McBride, the GAPS diet. I think it's 28 molecules of magnesium to process 1 molecule of glucose. And it's like 58 molecules of magnesium to process 1 molecule of fructose. So if you're just really a sugar person, then you're running through magnesium like crazy.
Yeah.
And then magnesium needs to be balanced with calcium. It affects your vitamin D. Like, these things are all connected to each other.
Right.
And so if we remove, like the naturopaths always talk about, remove the barrier to cure. So if we take the
Yeah.
sugar out, we get blood sugar balanced. You don't need as much magnesium. And so now we can replenish with food, and we don't have to be so serious about the sourcing if that's not within your reach.
Right. I think of it almost as like stealing,
Yes.
I love that you said that, what popped into my mind is, I'm a big fan. I know you're a data geek too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm a big fan of data. I love continuous glucose monitors for learning, again, empowering, and it's always, for me, the most fun. Yes, it's important also for people to understand, because we are bio-individual. What spikes your blood sugar might not be the same thing as what spikes mine, even if we're both eating a whole foods, real food diet, right? But my favorite part of having people wear a CGM is the impact that stress has on blood sugar.
Yeah. That's when the eyes open.
Yeah. Years ago, several years ago, I had a client who he was already doing, keto, and I wanted him to wear a CGM, and he was like, okay. I mean, he was a I'll do anything kind of guy. And it was so, and now if you had asked him, I mean, this is a high level entrepreneur with multiple companies, the stress was not a question. But for him to see the impact that it was having on his blood sugar, as somebody who didn't ever eat anything in that time that would spike his sugar, it was really, really eye-opening. And I think that we have to understand like you're saying, all of the inputs and what's depleting what or blocking. And that's where I think, when we really do understand it, and again, I'm not saying it isn't, that means we have to do everything perfectly to heal.
Or all at once.
Yeah. Like you can't, because imagine the stress, like the additional stress of trying to do it all at once.
And I see this all the time. I see this with like these crazy 6-hour like morning routines or like I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna have my lemon water and then I'm gonna do my meditation and then I'm gonna do my yoga and then and you got this like long checklist of things.
Do you have a family? Do you have a job? Do you have
Right.
anything else to do? What, like you said, now it's different if you're in that, my healing is my job and I need to learn these things. And my gosh, if somebody has the opportunity but that's not we're talking about sustainable lifestyle changes.
Yes.
And that brings up what I think we were chatting about before we hit record of, what my routine is now is not what my routine it was 5 years ago, and probably is different than it's going to be next year. So we're constantly shifting.
Yes.
And
And we have to give ourselves grace
Yeah.
when we enter a new chapter.
Yes.
So a lot of my clients come to see me and they're like, how did you do all of this? You changed everything. I changed everything over the last 8 years
Right.
and I'm still not done. And so when we talk about things like you got to build a skill, it's a muscle like anything else. Like you're not
Yeah.
just going to like be a huge bodybuilder overnight. You're not going to be like a wonderful piano player overnight. You have to practice and learn. And as you learn, you can take on a little bit more because what you learn becomes just part of
Yeah.
how you roll in. And when we talk about this, people are like, "Oh, I get it." And then this is where I can be really vulnerable about sometimes you have to let go of the tools that you just learned in order to learn the next set of tools. And I'm experiencing this personally right now where I was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder last year. It's a brand new chapter for me.
Okay.
It's a very intense chapter, trying to understand and wake up out of trauma and figure out who I am all over again. So my nutrition has slipped. Some weight has come back. And I was really embarrassed about that at first, but I had to give myself grace. I don't have capacity to do everything perfectly right now, and that is okay.
Yeah.
And it's worth it because if I can heal through this trauma piece, I have improved the quality of my water. So everything
Yes.
improve as we continue to move forward. But it's
Amazing.
not until we get that mindset around like stopping to blame ourselves or hold ourselves accountable when maybe that wasn't our job or maybe we didn't have the tools or know better in the first
Yeah.
place.
Well, and I think that blaming piece is part of how
Human.
somebody ends up working. It's how we got here, and it's just there are definitely common threads.
Absolutely.
And I love that you shared. Yeah, we can't. You can't always add on. I was thinking as you were talking about, like sometimes we have to let go of maybe something we just mastered to move on to the next step, or not let go as in throw out, right? But like loosen our grip
Relax a
on.
little.
Yeah, yeah. And it made me think of, well, that's how we're wired. Babies do that, right? Like I remember, when my oldest was little and he had been a great sleeper, and then like right before he started to crawl, he would not sleep well, or it just seemed
Mhm.
like every time the next developmental
Milestone. Mhm.
milestone would come up, one of the previous ones would fall off a little bit and then it would come back,
Yep.
you know.
Yes.
And so I just think that goes to healing's not a straight
Not a
line.
linear process.
And I think that especially I can only imagine with the work that you do, because I know from personal experience when I feel like I am not being the best example.
Yeah.
after, living so rigidly for so long. And now I get to enjoy life and actually heal. um, but there are times I remember my first bout with COVID, which was like nothing, but after I had this post-viral inflammation, tanked all my hormones, including thyroid. Um, and I woke up and felt like I felt when I, was full on in RA flare. And that was literally, I think, my first thought. Well, first was fear, panic, PTSD.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And second was, I'm a fraud. Look
Sure.
what I do for a living.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And so luckily, what I do for a living also then gives me grace is a huge part of healing. And I always was like, okay, this is learning. What's the takeaway here? How can I better support my clients? Because I just got this reminder of what it feels like to backslide.
Yeah.
And that wasn't like because I was running on empty again or doing, that was a viral hit. And it's important to learn that this too shall pass.
Yeah, we have to allow for getting flattened because life happens.
Yeah.
And capacity is really what we're talking about. Like what is your capacity? And I talk about this with my clients all the time. So on the cancer side of my practice and on the autoimmune in some capacity, well, across the board, I'm talking about blood sugar regulation and glycemic load across the board. But on the cancer side, we use the ketogenic diet quite often. Or we use fasting quite often. We use these things that are hormetic stressors.
Yeah.
And all stress, good or bad, goes in the same bucket. And if you don't have capacity to withstand, you may not be able to use the tools all the time in the same capacity or in the same way that maybe you would before, or you will be able to later. And so it's an ongoing kind of moving target in terms of healing, because you're always going to have a different capacity. So if someone's going through cancer treatments and they're kind of getting their butt kicked by chemotherapy, sometimes they can fast to mitigate side effects, and sometimes fasting increases the side effects. It makes them less resilient. Same thing with ketosis. Same things with sometimes we use methionine restriction. Sometimes we use like whatever the therapeutic diet is. Same thing with autoimmune paleo protocols on the autoimmune side, or histamine restricted diets or oxalate restricted diets, or whatever it is that we think may be irritating.
Or God forbid some combo of all of those.
I know, goodness gracious. Right? Or dairy-free ketogenic, which we use a lot on the cancer side. Like all of these things, like how much capacity do you have? And if it turns out there's other big stressors, sometimes those are actually more important or going to be a lower hanging fruit in terms of widening your capacity so that you can do these things. But everybody's different. And this is where the data is really, really helpful. I use a lot of blood work in my practice, and then I do use a lot of functional testing as well. But I also use a lot of genetics. So I look at nutrigenomics on everybody who will let me. It is required on the cancer side, but on anybody who will let me. And this is helping us understand where our vulnerabilities are. Because there are genes that will kind of leave you low on vitamin D and vitamin A, which are critical for the immune system, especially D when we're talking about autoimmunity and cancer.
Yes.
There are genes that will make you a little bit more prone to being locked in fight or flight in that nervous system in response to stress. There are genes that can leave you not being able to detoxify very well. Everybody knows about MTHFR, but there's a bunch more. Right. So if we know where your vulnerabilities are, that can help us prioritize. And then if we cross-reference with the actual what's happening right now data, the blood work, the functional labs, we can kind of start to get a picture. And this is how I did it for myself. I don't know that I would have been able to like unwind my onion and prioritize and get going without help. So I needed a practitioner to guide me through all of this stuff. Yeah. And if you have the resources, I highly recommend it. I think you can do it on your own. It's possible. Anything is possible.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a slower journey, and there's going to be a lot more ups and downs on that non-linear path. But
That's so
I think
true.
data is to our advantage here in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. I say, it's funny now with the information, knowledge, and data that I have now about myself, there's really not a great explanation for why I was able to really move the needle before I knew what I was doing and before I found somebody to work with and guide me. I say I had the throw spaghetti at the wall approach. Um, and so luckily for me, I found a piece and a resource that was enough to give me this idea of, wow, I think there are some food triggers going on here that I am completely unaware of and seemingly asymptomatic from. People have to understand when we have chronic inflammation. It just like the people that are so maxed out with chronic stress that tell me, no, I don't have stress. And I'm like, oh,
You've just adapted and accepted.
yeah. And so, yeah, I have, I was eating, I get this all the time too. Well, I've been eating gluten my whole life and it's not been a problem. And I'm like, well, why are we talking? You haven't connected the dots yet because your body hasn't been able to tell you. But so I really truly feel like I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing because there's no reason just with my toxic burden alone, there's no reason that diet and meditation should have been enough to get me feeling well enough to go back to school, to learn more about this, you know what I mean? And so I always say, and it took me years. It did.
Yes. Yeah.
It took years. And so working with a practitioner when one can afford to is definite, and the right practitioner for you.
Yes.
It is definitely not only, the expertise and the knowledge and the guidance, but also to tailor, because we're talking about these generalizations, but it's all with individualization. Like you said, you're using a lot of testing and data, and most important, listening to story.
Yes.
And I would imagine using a bit of knowledge mixed with intuition as well when you listen to story, as to, I get goosebumps when somebody, says something that they don't give any weight to, but I'm like, ooh, we need to, that's it. That's where we're starting.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That biography, with a chronology is what we call it. And it's literally like a detailed accounting of your whole life.
Yeah.
Like all the good, bad, ugly, everything.
Yep.
And that is probably the most helpful tool in all of the data that I collect, is that chronology. So when people are able to take the time to voice record it or write it down or whatever, it's invaluable, because it always comes back to the water is contaminated in some way. And we got to get that cleaned up in order for the changes that you're making to stick.
Yeah.
It really is. Because if you're dealing with life with maladaptive stress coping mechanisms long enough, you end up in a broken down, diseased state.
Yeah.
You just do. That's how the cycle works. And for some of us, it's like big traumas and little traumas and too much stress and all of that. And for some people, it's just pushing past capacity for too long.
Right.
But that's all. Or just maybe they picked up a way to numb their feelings. Right.
Yeah.
But back to the mind-body connection, I see a lot of people that are disconnected mind-body because their body hasn't been safe to be in.
Right.
And so when I ask questions like, do you know what your emotions feel like in your body? I didn't know that feelings were a physical thing.
Thoughts. Yeah.
When I ask that question, because I couldn't feel them, I think I've got like 2 or 3 that I can identify now. So we're making progress.
Yay. Good job.
A lot of people, they look at me like a deer and like, what do you, and then they start thinking about it and they're like, give me an example. Like, what do emotions feel like? And the first one that I identified was guilt. Because sometimes you have to slow down and take some time off when you are chronically ill. And so you don't get to everything that you're supposed to get to.
Yeah.
And I was having one of those days and I was feeling anxious and I couldn't figure out why I was like antsy and I felt like I needed to do something. So I actually had a chat with ChatGPT and I was like, I said, what does guilt feel like? What does shame feel like? And turns out guilt can actually feel like anxiety because you feel like you've done something wrong
Yeah.
that you need to fix, that you need to change, you need to take action. And I was like, oh, okay, I got it. So guilt for me feels like anxiety. Got it.
I love that. Like I remember, and sometimes just it's like that light bulb moment. It is like just a leap. It would seemingly just something presented in a way that you didn't think about before. I was so happy when I found out that I'm like, oh, I have genetic predisposition to procrastinate.
Mm.
And I am a procrastinator. I have always been a procrastinator. I also always get my stuff done, right?
Yep.
Like I always
And
meet
done well.
deadlines. I always and it was when I saw that I kind of laughed like, haha, there's my, okay, because to me being a procrastinator was a negative attribute,
Sure.
right? And as soon as I realized, like, just something clicked where I realized those things I just said. You know what? I never don't get a project done on time. I don't ever let anybody down except for me.
Mhm.
I realized that I carried, like, while I was procrastinating, it would create guilt that I experienced as anxiety.
Yeah.
And now I let go of all of that and I still procrastinate, but it serves me way better now
Sure.
because
Sure.
I
You're not
don't have to,
Your little gremlin person in the back of your head is not judging you for
oh my gosh,
let it go.
yeah. And it was like, holy cow, I might as well enjoy my procrastinating. And
Yes.
and I always do. I don't know. I credit my daughter because in my life, that's who uses the term the most. Almost always, I practice productive procrastination.
Hmm.
So, if there's like a big thing that I'll the house will be cleaner, the laundry will be like whatever, other
Oh,
projects
sure.
will get done.
I do that too, actually. If I procrastinate something big, I go find something else
Yeah,
productive. That's interesting. I never
yeah.
connected those dots.
And I think I had a friend who like came over one time when I was in undergrad, so, a few years ago. Um, and my apartment was spotless. And she was like, holy cow. And I was like, oh, yeah, I have a paper due. Uh, and it's like, oh, and I look back and I'm like, oh, did I turn the paper in on time? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And so it is an interesting, as I love that you shared that this is all part of our evolution with wellness or wherever we are on that journey of like, we're never done.
No, no. It's an ongoing iteration.
Yeah.
And it little stuff helps. Like you taking pressure off of yourself and not beating yourself up for procrastinating
Yeah.
might just be the thing that clears enough capacity so you can eat better. So you can make sure you
Right.
get to bed on time. So you can shut down your phone when the sun goes down or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's just finding that little thread to get started. Where can you take some pressure off in some capacity? And sometimes we need labs to find like microbiome issues and hormone issues and blood sugar issues and these kinds of things. But a lot of it can like just evaluate how are you receiving the world? How are you approaching life? Like, are you really upset that your husband left his socks on the floor in the bedroom? Or are you upset because you don't feel heard about that thing you brought up last week that he brushed off? Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the awareness of where we just need to like take a step back and breathe and look objectively at things.
Ah, amazing. So I kept you already way over time, but listeners are waiting for me to ask you, what is one step that they can take starting today to improve their health?
Oh man, there's so
I
many.
know it's a tough
One
question.
step.
Yep. First
I
one that
will
popped up.
I will say, according to a Chapel Hill study, I don't remember the year, it was in the last 10 years, we discovered that only about 6% of people are metabolically healthy. The rest of us have some sort of metabolic dysfunction. So the very first thing I would say is getting their blood sugar balanced. And that might be addressing stress and pressure emotionally. That might be getting pain managed if they're dealing with chronic pain. That might be getting rid of sugar, getting rid of potatoes, bread, starch, whatever it is. Something like maybe even adding more protein or adding more fats, but figuring out where their blood sugar situation is now and if it is not optimized, starting to kind of uncover and discover why and find a thread in there that feels like they can make a little bit of a change.
I love that. That's brilliant. Really. I mean, and it's you can't change what you don't know either. So I love that you backed it up to like, okay, let's figure out what's going on. And it's one of the things that we've seen post-COVID are more metabolic changes, even without people changing diet and lifestyle. A1Cs are creeping up and insulin resistance is becoming more prominent. And so don't think that just because you're eating the right way, that between the foods, the stressors, the interesting post-viral things. I love that. Yeah.
And if you can get your PCP to order an HbA1c, that'll give you kind of a 3-month snapshot. It's a proxy. It's not actually measuring blood sugar, but it's a proxy of what your blood sugar is doing. And
I like it because you can't cheat it.
Right. It is what it is. Like
you can't just like eat really clean.
Super
right
metabolically healthy, there's some weirdness. But like at first, if your number comes back in the United States in our units, if it is above 5 and you have chronic illness or cancer, there's some work to do there. We actually want it to be pretty low if we're dealing with these things. And then they typically are not a fan of testing fasting insulin, but if you can also get a fasting insulin, that'll also you'll understand. So for cancer, we actually like fasting insulin to be below 3, which is very low. Without cancer and chronic illness, definitely below 10 for sure, but as low as you can get it would be excellent.
Love that. And
that should give you just a little bit of a starting point. And if you can't get anybody to do that, you can always jump on Amazon and grab a glucometer, like a Keto Mojo or a Precision Extra, and poke your finger and look at your blood sugar when you are not fasting. So like maybe before your last meal of the day. Where is it? If it's below 85, you're in good shape. If it's above 85, you got some work to do.
Yeah. And that is one of the challenges with, and now there are other CGMs that are not made for diabetics on insulin. That was something that used to drive me crazy, as I am a huge CGM fan and I have been for a long time. Yes. But I will alarm a Dexcom all day long because I
drop low,
like my blood sugar to be low. And I'm not on insulin, so I'm safe for me. But so yeah, it is having the right tools for where you are is important.
Yes,
I love
CGMs
that.
are excellent. But if you're the type that's going to stress yourself out by watching your blood sugar too closely, maybe a CGM isn't right for you. Maybe poke your finger every now and then.
Yeah, I said it's funny. I did years ago. I've had an Aura ring since I think like 2016, and but I was working with a client once who it was her data was stressing her out, and she was like, I don't know what to, and I'm like, take the ring off. Yeah. For right now.
Ban people from data sometimes.
It's not, so know yourself and
yeah, if it's going to be one more thing that causes you stress, then maybe go on your symptoms. Go to Google and ask, like, what are symptoms of dysregulated blood sugar? It's going to be like tired after meals, or can't go very long between meals, get hangry, or Getting up to the middle of the night to pee all the time, or like these things.
Yeah,
Go off yours.
amazing. Heather, for people listening on the go that aren't going to check the show notes, where is the best place to find you?
All routes lead back to my website, which is just heathercoan.com, and that's Cooan. So you can find me
Looks
there.
like Cooan.
It does look like Cooan, yes. And Soil to Soul Nutrition is the name of my practice. We are virtual and global. We work with everybody all over the place. There's 2 other ladies that work with me on my team. But yeah, everything can be found at heathercoan.com. I'm not the greatest on social media. I'm trying to get more consistent and better at that.
Yeah. And the website is so packed with resources. We didn't even touch on it, and I would love to have you back, and we can do another episode. But check out, Heather loves to cook, and she has amazing recipes that are healthy and delicious, and really can be just such a great place even to start, because it's so overwhelming if you're not already living this lifestyle. And so even just that is an amazing resource. So
yes. I
and
have so many
hopefully
more recipes I need to get posted, and I'm getting ready to add an AI capability to the website that actually will allow you to customize the recipes based on your food sensitivities. And
amazing.
so getting there.
Wow. Well, hopefully you'll come back and join us again. I thank you so much for the wisdom and positivity you share, and the just the sunshine that you are. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
For everyone listening, remember you can get the show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.